all the stuff with Diamond. I mean, it's like there's all these filings every day. And I'm sure you and me, everybody in the industry probably goes on that Diamond site and sees what the filings are that day, or gets them in the mail, because that's legally what has to happen. And but guess what? We're not bankruptcy lawyers. So I have sometimes asked a friend who at least is a lawyer to explain a few things to me, right? And so, if you think you are, I guess this is my elevator pitch for journalism. If you think you are well informed, then you need to talk to a bankruptcy lawyer and have them explain what the papers, the Diamond's bankruptcy filings mean. And, or you can pay me $5 a month on my Patreon and I will go talk to the bankruptcy lawyer for you.
Hi, my name is Adam Freeman. This is Comic Industry Insiders, the weekly podcast where it is my joy to get to spend so much time with the movers and shakers, the people behind the scenes of the comic book industry, and get to know them a little better and understand what they do. I'm going to tell you more about that later. This week's conversation was with Heidi MacDonald, the owner and operator of the Comics Beat. We talked about how she went from fanzines to one of the most respected news sources in our industry. And then we dig into who killed comics journalism, how it remains viable, and how we can all grow this vital resource to the comics industry ecosystem. But before we jump into that, I had a couple things I wanted to do, would love for you to know before we jump into this week's episode. We've had so much fun doing the Comic Industry Insiders monthly live show that we're going to start doing it weekly now. Every Tuesday, not only will there be a new drop of your favorite podcast, this one, but for 1 hour at 2 p.m. Eastern, we'll bring you the biggest stories in our industry, along with the expertise to make sense of it all. We'll be broadcasting through the Experience Network, as well as our own Facebook and LinkedIn pages, so if you haven't subscribed yet, you absolutely should. And podcast friends, if you're just getting this audio, let us know if you'd like us to be dropping this audio as well. Second, our monthly newsletter is now weekly. Every Friday, we're bringing you the Prana Bullet, a super short email to bring you the most current sales reporting and headlines you might have missed for the previous week. The goal here is to just be something super skimmable before you head out for the weekend. If you haven't already, please head over to pranadm.com to subscribe. Now, a quick word from this week's sponsor, and we'll get right back to the delightful and inspirational conversation with the Beat's own Heidi MacDonald. This week's episode is brought to you by our friends at Manage Comics. Are you tired of outdated, clunky software running your shop? Manage Comics is the modern solution for comic store owners who want a smarter, easier way to manage their shop. It's built on Shopify, the world's #1 e-commerce platform. With an integrated POS system, Manage Comics saves you time and makes more money by giving customers the power to manage their own subscriptions. Upgrade to a simpler system that works for you, not against you. And I'm going to go off script in here and say, I love Manage Comics. There are other solutions out there that are also really good, but there's a reason that we're so close to Brian Garside and work with him and his team. Manage Comics is a really wonderful tool for any comic shop owner. You should join their next webinar and see the difference for yourself. Visit managecomics.com/webinar today. And make sure you told them that we sent you.
Oh, hi. Hi, Adam. And I'm proud to call you a friend too.
Aww.
And thank you for those words. And on the crime scene that was here on the street where I live, and definitely for sure. Yeah, I mean, just to throw, I am the editor-in-chief of the Beat, comicsbeat.com. I like that,
That's true.
And the publisher of K Comics Beat, which we launched last year, about webtoon scrolling, vertical scrolling comics.
Yep.
So
you really would think that I would write those kinds of things down and put them into an introduction. That's
no,
the kind
of
prepped work that real journalists do, Heidi.
Well, it's not even, like this is the day we're recording this is you and I were talking about a big news story that broke, and you and I were both like, I don't know if awoken, but certainly our morning was like, did you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say what it is, because whenever you're watching this, just use your imagination. It could be almost anything, right? Like, because like if you are an insider, your day often starts with the text or the DM. It's like, oh my God, did you guys hear? Did you see this? Did you see
we
this?
Can talk around it. I mean, we're the window right now is actually pretty slim between when we record.
Oh,
sometimes it's months, but right now it's probably only gonna be weeks.
Yeah, well, then today, well, we'll swing back to that. Breaking news.
All right, good. I like that. You know what? We'll tease it. We'll come back to it. That way people will get past that dreaded 26-minute mark for me. So actually, you know what I want to do is actually start with, I think it might have been the first time you and I were in the room. There was an auction for an organization that I don't know if they're even around anymore. So I'm just going to ask the question, who were or are the Friends of Lulu?
Oh my God, that was the first time we hung out. Friends of Lulu is an organization that we started in the mid-90s, and it was called the Organization for Women in Comics, and I was on the initial board. I named it. I named the organization, but I had a lot of help from Trina Robbins, the late great Trina Robbins, Liz Schiller, who is not as well known now, but certainly was very integral, and then other women of the time. Maggie Thompson was involved, Martha Thomas's, some people. I want to call out Cheryl Harris. She's not that known, but she was a lawyer who gave us a lot of legal advice. That was really good. But anyway, we started it because in the 90s, in the I call it the Chromium Age. I'm the only one who does, but as a longtime journalist, I realized I've been doing this for 40 years. And sometimes you throw something out, you throw it out there, and if it catches on, it catches on. Yeah. I've been lucky enough to have a few catchphrases that are sort of embedded in the lexicon of comics now. Chromium Age is not really caught on. I know other people use it, but anyway.
What has gone on?
Probably the one I'm best known for is the satisfying chunk. Which is the satisfying chunk. Like you have to, it's really just value, for money. And in a more colorful way. But it's like when you buy a comic, which you can see, I have quite a few behind me.
Yeah.
Did you get enough story for the money that you spent? And it's a periodical. The fact we're digressing all over the place, but this is just how already my mind works. The fact that the comic book periodical has degraded into the pamphlet or the floppy should tell you about how satisfying that chunk is. So anyway, at this time in comics in the 90s, no women or children read comics. There was so much gatekeeping. Now, of course, they did read comics, but the gatekeeping was insane at that time. I was told by powerful, powerful people who ran the comics industry that women couldn't read comics. They weren't interested in comics. And also, children didn't read comics, and we don't want kids in our stores. I was told this by very prominent retailers. And whoa. So this was I just realized my levels might have dropped. I'm sorry, I got so excited my levels dropped. Like for me, I was working for Disney Adventures magazine at the time. So some of your millennial listeners, viewers might remember that because they grew up reading it. So I was the comics editor. And I knew quite well that kids read comics. Also, I read comics as a kid. Everybody freaking reads comics as a kid. What are you talking about? I mean, it's the dumbest possible thing I've ever heard. And
any of those people are still around must be feeling very, very stupid, considering, the comics is pervasive in. I mean, you want to talk about the best-selling comics are for kids now, legitimately.
Not. You switch
solely for kids.
Flop that around, Adam. The best-selling books for children are comics.
Even better. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
I mean, I was just looking at PW's children's front list, and it's about 25 books, and I think 6 or 7 of them, including like maybe 3 of the top 5, are comics by Dave Pilkey, to be fair. But anyway, so in the mid-90s, we were having, there was a lot of really great women creators at that time, but they just struggled because there was so much prejudice against them. And, and when I say prejudice, I mean people saying, well, I don't think women can draw superhero comics. And we see this, or, women aren't visual, so they can't read comics.
Oh
This was
God.
actually things that I was told over and over again.
Yeah.
So, guess what? That's prejudice, by the way. When you say certain group can't do this because, these are not things that are true. So anyway, there was a bunch of us got together at San Diego Comic-Con in 1994. And I think, we didn't have Twitter then, so I can't look it up. But anyway, we had a meeting, and like I had organized the meeting, and so many incredibly talented women were in the room. Linda Medley and Jackie Estrada and Roberta Gregory. And to me, most important of all, the one that was most important was that Wendy Pini came of ElfQuest, because Wendy had always been really, really, successful. She was incredibly successful writer, artist, publisher, all that. And she didn't come to a lot of women in comics things because she didn't want to be, which I totally understand why she didn't, because you don't want to be like, oh yeah, she's a woman in comics. Of course she was, but anyway, the fact that Wendy came was very, very important to me, and I think to all of us who put the meeting together. And really in total grassroots hit fashion, we just went around the room and we're like, talk about why you're here and what you think about the state of women in comics. And I guess there was about 30 women there, 35 women. And by the time we'd gone around the room, it's like I was listening, and so many of them said, I want to do a comic for kids, but I can't find a publisher. Or I just want to do stories that I like and no one will publish it. And, this was not like, Me Too. This was just
business.
This was just business. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just creators trying to bring their work to market. And so by the time it came back around to me, like I went into this meeting having one idea, but I on the fly realized that whatever we did coming out of this meeting had to be about expanding readership. And when it came back to me and I said, look, I've listened to all these stories, and it just sounds like what we need to do is prove that there is a readership for the kind of material that the people in this room want to produce. And so that was why. So Friends of Lulu became many things, but our motto was like, comics are for everybody, comics are for everyone. We got the great Mary Wilshire to draw our mascot, which was a grown-up little Lulu, who's a character created by Marge, made famous by my idol John Stanley, but in these comics. And the thing was that little Lulu comics, like, was always up against the boys, but she was smarter than them because she just used common sense, right? And but the boys were treated respectfully. It was just like, oh, boys are so silly. Lulu's outwitted them again. Anyway, so we put together all kinds of marketing materials. Actually, we did reading lists. Like, Adam, we did so many things that were so far ahead of our time. And we did get some funding from the industry, and but not a whole lot. So it was very, very grassroots. It's paid for by memberships. And but yeah, we put together all kinds of things, like a retailer handbook.
I remember that. I had that in the store, actually. I remember that. It was
called and it was called How to Get Girls into Your Store. And so we played with the whole idea that this was verboten territory. And then so we started in the mid-90s, and I would say by 1999 Tokyo Pop published Sailor Moon in authentic flop style. And it was proven that not only could girls read comics, they could read them backwards.
That's a great line. That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is 100% true. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that it just goes to the point that you have been on this sort of cusp of change for comics all along. and have been navigating that path. Not only obviously were you right about that, and I remember that sort of,
Because you were
women
running
are.
a store, you were running a shop then, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, what, 94?
Yeah,
I
94,
was
95,
working
yeah.
in a shop right then,
Mm-hmm.
and then bought it right around 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I was a shop rat, and then the shop manager for most of the
Mm-hmm.
90s. So yeah, it really genuinely that conversation of, well, women are not visual is just. It's remarkable. It's remarkably silly to think back on how that was just pervasive. It was just the common
Mm-hmm.
understanding.
Yeah.
And I think now that generationally, you see, I mean, I still talk to women, obviously, who are our age, who say, I just don't get it. But for them, it's a cultural thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
women who are 20 years younger, 30 years younger, like, that's just so antithetical to the way they see the world.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You're absolutely right. I cannot
And
imagine we still were there. Yeah.
I know, and just to show how where we're at now, I've noticed like there's all these ads for theme parks, right? Like there's this ad for Universal, and they're all about the mom. They're all about
Oh
the
yeah.
mom going into this fantasy world, and which, and they are on the baseball game. So I mean, I'm a big baseball
Sure.
fan. You'll undoubtedly learn this throughout this podcast. So obviously a lot of women like baseball, but to me, that is such a validation of the fact that, elder millennials, mothers,
Mm-hmm.
were into fandoms,
Yeah.
in 2000, around the turn of the century, they got into their fandoms, and they might be moms and they might have kids, but they still have their they are fans. They are the middle-aged fans now. And, this ad is really playing on the idea that, um you know maybe I read Marion Zimmer Bradley growing up, and now everybody's reading Rebecca Yarros, and the women's
Right.
fandoms are a huge source of money.
Well, even I mean, when I took over the shop in 2000, and at first I was just running the same comic shop that I had been running. Like, I just was, I owned a comic shop. We'd run a comic shop, and now I owned it, and I was just running basically the same playbook. And then my then wife decided she wanted to be a little more involved, and so she was. And the more we allowed that interaction for her voice to be heard, the more we found that, like, if we created an environment that was really centered around mom, dad was coming in anyway, right? The kids were coming in anyway. The minute the mom felt comfortable in there, the minute the girlfriend felt comfortable in there, like, that expanded our market. It expanded our reach. It was just good business at the time.
Right. And that, Adam, that's how we sold this idea to comics publishers in the 90s, because, as you know, this was one of the low points of the industry. Sales just plummeted. Like, this is, there was the whole Marvel Heroes World debacle. There was the crash of speculation. Something like 4,000 shops closed. So that's bad.
Yeah.
Marvel went bankrupt, so we're in a decline. So when we went to publishers, and we would, people on the board, members, we had a pitch, right?
Sure.
And we would talk to publishers, and we literally pitched it as, how would you like to double your audience? And there's no one who's not going to say, that sucks, I don't want to do it. So we were just like, look, how would you like to get new readers? How would you like to have more readers reading your products, you're reading your comics? And it was a persuasive pitch at the time. And indeed, as we've seen comic sales soar. I mean, it's a $2 billion industry, which isn't the biggest, gigantic, but it's not bad. It's not bad. And I think,
beyond being $2 billion industry of print comics for sale, it's the cultural is still far and away the cultural lead of entertainment.
Yeah,
right?
And I think it would really be fascinating to explore the notion. We look back on the Marvel comic circulation little filings, you know, like
Mhm.
old comics that had to go through the mail, had to have a postal filing. And John Jackson Miller has been aggregating all of these, you know, he's the
Right.
expert on them. But, you know, yes, you look at, you know, Werewolf by Night and you see 200,000 copies sold and you're like, what? You know, because the top comic now sells a lot less than 200,000 copies. Well, I
Well,
mean, but Werewolf by Night
it was
got
just a mid.
canceled.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a
it got
mid-range.
canceled because it didn't sell
Exactly.
that well, right? But I think uh I think there's a very common narrative, uh you know, of people who have been at it for a long time, such as myself, you know, people in my age bracket, that, you know, the readership has declined. But I don't think it has. I think the readership has actually improved greatly. If you look at it on a per page basis, or, you know,
Sure.
a person per page, I don't know. Like I feel like you just said, it's comics creations are culturally pervasive in the 21st century. Period.
Maybe even more so than they were back in,
Mhm.
you know, the let's say 40s or 50s, when they were hitting those massive circulation
Mhm.
numbers. That it was the cultural effect of that work was limited to kids reading them off the newsstand.
Mhm.
Right
Mhm.
now, the cultural impact is felt all over. But yeah, I
Correct.
100% agree with that. Well, I don't want to miss. You and I will do this all day long.
I know we
have,
can. We have a lot,
um,
yeah.
but I did want to use this opportunity because I don't want to miss this opportunity to talk about Heidi and how you get from where you began to where, you know, to where we are now, right? Because we
Mhm.
do want to talk specifically about comics journalism
Yes,
and
yes,
how it
yes.
works, why it was so effective for so long, and why it struggles now. I think, you know, you would know this better than anybody, to really why it really struggles to find its voice in
Mm.
the way that it once did. So to do that, I'd love to go back. The earliest credit I could find for Heidi MacDonald was in the Comics Journal, July of 1982,
Mhm.
under the title "Archetype Meets Angst." And I will
That
say to
was,
my friends at Fantagraphics, I really did try and pay for the subscription so I could read it. Wasn't able to get through in
I know
time,
they
so I
that
don't know what was
mhm.
in that. But was that your first
For the back.
submission?
Yep, that was it. That was my debut. Good work. Not, I didn't remember it was 1982, so
Yeah,
43 years. Wow. Woo, amazing.
boy.
Yeah, and yes, that was my first thing published. It was also the first thing I'd ever submitted. So, and
All right.
yes.
Hello. First
Mhm.
up to bat, and she
Yep,
knocks
yeah,
it out.
yeah.
Love it.
I've had a lot of like first time success in my life that's quite misleading, but pleasant. And you know, when the day you had to type it out, and I mean, it's just hard to believe that, but like, you know, the romance of the typewriter, like you'd have to sit on a typewriter and we
Yeah.
had correcto tape, and you'd have to put the correcto tape in, like if you meant, and I mean, I did it. I would retype my stories sometimes 5 or 6 times. I
Oh,
mean, like I was a heavy you'd write it on a, you type it out, and then you'd take your pencil and read it and edit it, and then you'd go back and retype it and with the correcto tape and everything. I mean, yeah, it was pretty incredible. So it was Dwight Decker, a name not much remembered, who found my story, my submission in the slush pile, published it, and then I started talking to Gary Groth and the late Kim Thompson,
mm-hmm.
and and then I was quickly contacted by Don and Maggie Thompson, who were running the Comics Buyer's Guide at the time, and started writing a column for them. So at this time, yeah, the Comics Journal, they had this, you know, superhero focused spinoff called Amazing Heroes. There was the
Mm-hmm.
Buyer's Guide, which was this newspaper. If you want, I'll take a break and I'll run and get a copy of it because I was just cleaning up and found some copies of it.
Let's do it. Actually, I'd love to show a copy.
Yes.
You mind?
Okay. So this is from, these are not that period, but it's 2003, July 25th, 2003.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Now and again, Tony Caputo returns to publishing comics is the headline here.
Nice.
Nice, right? Let's see what else. Rosansky named Defender of Liberty.
Defender or offender?
Defender.
Okay, good.
Okay. Let's see. Where's another? I've got to do, I'm going to do a podcast of my YouTube of my own where I read these. Oh, okay. This one. But let me just to show you how timeless these are. This is March 26, 2004.
Dan Buckley speaks.
So, what's shaken with Chaikin? What's shaken with Chaikin? So I know you're working with Chip Zdarsky on his print, and I can't help but feel that Chip is really channeling the spirit of what's shaken with Chaikin, right?
I think we might have to work what's shaken with Chaikin into the into that cover, those blurbs, which almost never actually coordinate with something inside.
Yeah.
But
So. But the Buyer's Guide of the time was very similar in format. It was a stapled newspaper. So anyway, I wrote a column for them, and I was writing for all these fanzines at the time. And when you talk about so I'm going to try to not ramble on here endlessly, which of course I love doing, but focus it more to your topic, because the fanzines of the time, and fanzines had been in science fiction fandom, and then moved to comics fandom in the 70s and 80s. I'd say they were flourishing in the 80s. Almost every one of them was started by people who would go on to publish comics, right?
Right.
So the early fandoms were just, Paul Levitt became the publisher of DC Comics, was the co-founder. I'm not co-founder. He would probably correct me. But anyway, the Comics Reader was another fanzine at the time that Paul was involved with. Mark Grunwald and Dean Mulaney, who were publishers at the time, did one called Omniverse. There was just so many people, and this is actually true, I've discovered in other countries. Like in France, a lot of fanzine publishers also went on to become very important publishers. Chris Staros, who does Top Shelf, he also started out doing something called the Staros Report. So a lot of times the journalism was comics adjacent. And if you look through those early issues of the Comics Journal where I'm writing, you'll see spot illustrations by like Scott McCloud, and I think Kurt Busiek was an artist at that time, so he has a couple little spot ills, I think. And other people who went on to become artists, and so it very much was kind of a testing ground for creators, a proving ground for creators, mentoring actually, or career development, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it still kind of is. I can think of a couple of different people who, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about Joey Esposito and like, oh gosh, I can't remember his name.
Well, a lot of people have listened. The Beat, which, comicsbeat.com.
Sure.
Has definitely been an incubator for a lot of people, and especially I would say probably about 15 years ago, probably about 2010, around in there, maybe through 2012, we had a whole influx of writers who really went on to have tremendous success. It might be a little past that. I would have to look at a timeline. But Zainab Akhtar, who does the online. Now I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, she's incredible. She's one of the most important comics publishers out there. When she had her own imprint, so she wrote for the Beat briefly. Henry Barajas is going on. He was a writer for us. Steve Morris. I mean, he's in marketing for Rebellion. He still runs his site, by the way. So they were like, my proudest. Like, hi, you're amazing. Why don't you go on and do some incredible stuff? Oh, Zach Clementi. He was from there also, but he does Bulgahan Press. He was another one of our writers. So that was a really great, inspired kind of generation of people who wanted to go on and do their own thing. So really, really happy to have, been a stopping point for them. So, well,
there's two things I'd love to dig into there. One is more broad and one's more personal. The broad one is, as someone who I've never actually done, I mean, I've had a couple things published here and there, but I would never say I was never much of a journalist. It was always like, opinion pieces and whatever published. As someone who has always worked on the publishing side, and as a consumer of it, is there a certain amount of conflict of interest in that, if you know that the people that you're dealing with all want to be in publishing or in creative, is there some sort of conflict of that person not necessarily having the same, say, journalistic standards as, someone who's really focused on journalism?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's valid. I think that's a very valid criticism. But I think at the same time, I think the problems with comics journalism, that is not the main problem,
Right.
And well, I mean, unless it's like a collateral problem where everybody wants to do it only so they can write comics, going back, the other huge breeding ground, like for comics creation was the Warren Ellis Forum. And, they had a couple spinoffs. One was called Ninth Art. Remember Ninth Art?
I remember Ninth Art. Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Why did you say what Ninth Art was?
Well, it was always cooler than me, so I never really got involved in it. So if you were involved, I remember it as an offshoot. I wasn't really involved.
It was just a website that ran reviews of comics, but it was by Kieran Gillen and Kelly Sue DeConnick, and I know Chip might have been involved, and Matt Fraction. I would say that Kelly Sue, Matt, and Kieran, and also Jamie McKelvey, I would say they were probably the four ringleaders of the whole thing. And where are they now?
I know. Well, it's funny. I was just reminded of a text that just came in. Chip, I did an interview with Chip that drops as we're recording this, dropped today, where we talked quite a bit about the effect of the Warren Ellis Forum on comics in general. And we talked a lot about why it worked in that period and why... I mean, try not to get too deep into the Warren Ellis of it, although I do have a few there's no way of talking about your career without talking about that some, is that how effective that was in shaping how comics is, and how we don't, that's another thing that we don't really have right now. We have social media, but we don't have community like that we had.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I want to just, throw in a plug here for what you're doing here, because you're interviewing so many great people, and I don't have a commute, but I've been starting to listen while I do chores. A lot of chores to do, so I'm going to catch up very quickly. But I was listening to Matt Rosenberg, and which was so interesting. Like I learned so much from listening to that, and it was really, and like one of the things that was so interesting. He was like, him talking from the punk ethos, saying, the comics community. You think you guys have a community, and which he's right in the punk sense, but we still do have a great community, but a different way. I think a lot of these breeding grounds, nests, pockets are really just. I guess it's the right place and the right time. I guess you have to have the whole thing. Like Warren, and look, Warren did wrong things, but he did right things too. And even some of his accusers talked about how he had helped them. So and I mean, I'm not whitewashing Warren, but I'm just saying it's complicated, and he needed to be called out 100 billion%, and people needed to get restitution. But I think it's important to look at some of the other things that came out of it. It's a mixed, very mixed bag.
100%.
So Warren had a vision, and so he drew people who had a vision around him, and that was the right vision for the time. So I mean, it doesn't take much to see that Matt Fraction is very talented.
Right.
That is the lowest possible test. It's like sometimes James Jean gives me credit for helping get him discovered, which I appreciate that tremendously, but it's very low bar. Very low bar. I literally just happened to be the only person who would take a meeting with James Jean that day.
Oh.
And no one else would take a meeting with him.
And so you got him. What was his first credit that you got him?
He came into Vertigo because I used to be an editor of Vertigo Comics, and he came in with his friend Farrell, because Farrell and James and Tomer Hanukkah all went to SVA together. So they were kind of this little kid gang of insanely talented
Farrell
people.
Dalrymple. I don't think I've ever said their last name.
Farrell
right.
Dalrymple. Yeah.
I got it right.
And,
okay, great.
Yeah. And like Farrell said, "Oh, my friend James, is here. Will you look at his book?" And like none of the other editors would do it. But I did. And of course, within 2 pages, I was like, this isn't, I mean, his notebooks are like, oh, unbelievable. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And because I was on the way out at that point. So I went and I said, you know what? You need to meet Mark Chiarello, who was the cover editor. So I said, come with me. And I took him down to meet Mark. And of course, Mark, within 2 seconds, was like, oh my God. Like, you know, I'm sure his hands were trembling. Like, I've just discovered James Sheen. And
excuse me, I have to go make a note on my calendar. Discovered James Sheen.
Yes, like Dear Diary. and you know, then Shelley Bond came by the next day and was like, you know, I need a cover artist for Fables. Any ideas? And Mark was like, you know, I just saw this. So that's how the sausage is made. But anyway, I'm just we digress again. But I'm just saying, it's like it does not take that much, you know, talent spotting, cool hunting ability to see that a Matt Fraction or a James Jean or a Kelly Sue DeConnick is very talented.
Yeah.
And yet sometimes they're not heard.
That's true. That's very true. You know, as we're talking, I wonder how much of this is just us old farts complaining about kids these days, right? I mean, do they have pockets that we're not seeing? Or the guys who were where you and I are then, did they know what the Warren Ellis Forum was?
No,
maybe
they
not.
Don't care. No, and they don't
care.
Yeah, they didn't care.
So yeah, I wonder about that. So anyway, sorry.
No, but that's an incredibly valid question. And I think about that a lot. I'm just, because, you know, I want to steal from this new young pocket of talent.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we all do. We want to be down with the kids, or at least know who the kids are, right?
Who the good ones are. Well, I don't need to know all of them.
Yeah. So, so I keep asking about comics talk, and I guess there is comics talk, but every time I watch one, it's not for me. And I understand, but so to get to your question of who killed comics journalism, I mean, it really is short form video that is killing everything. It is the kudzu of media. It is a creeping vine that you know is you know parasitically crawling through all of our systems and you know destroying them. And
the irony is, I'm totally cutting that whole thing down as a short form video.
I know, right? It's I had some tremendous success with my own short form video. So I mean, I get it. It's just, you know, to me, when I was a little child, I know this is not the linear narrative you were hoping for.
Oh, no, listen, I am all for this. I knew going in what I was down for.
We were going to freewheel.
You and I have had too many lunches together to me think I'm going to keep you on a track. No, this was always going to be memento from the beginning. So, you know, when I was a child, I had equal desires to be a writer or to be a musician. And I was very talented as a musician. I was kind of a child prodigy in that. And so I did pursue music. And then I guess it was but, you know, I was doing my own cabaret act and singing and playing piano and writing songs and everything. And when I lived in Los Angeles. And then at one point I was like, gee, to be successful at music, I need to write great songs. And then I need to learn how to perform great songs. And then I need to go out and find a gig to play my great songs. And then I have to perform them in front of people and promote every show I do before the internet, by the way. And that's a lot of work. When I write something, I just type it up and put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it and put it in the mail and I'm done. Or hit send on the keyboard and I'm done. And I was like, I think I'll stick with writing. It's so much easier. And so that's true for me. It's like I you know, when what was that little handheld camera that was all the rage like 20 years ago? It was called it had a Zoopy name or something like that. Oh,
you know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the first things where people before
Like video. It was the
iPhones.
first time you could actually do
Yeah.
video in a handheld device. What was
Mhm,
that called?
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Well, it's another on the lost.
Zune? Was it Zune?
No, it wasn't the
No.
Zune. I don't
Damn it.
remember. I shot. So anyway, I'm experimenting with it. I'm shooting my little videos. This is before TikTok. This is when before the iPhone
Mm-hmm.
made this. Child's play, literally child's play. And then I go and I'm, same thing. I'm like editing it. I'm color grading it a little bit. I'm stitching it. And of course, we didn't have the tools that we have now that are just like zip, zip, zip. And I'm like, oh my God, this is too much work. Not for me. Type, type, type. So, it's interesting to me. Like, yes, we do have a lot of tools that make doing short form video very easy. But, you still need, I saw some people who are doing YouTube videos at Toy Fair, which was a couple, last week.
Yeah.
And, they have a whole rig. It's two people. They have the host and they have the shooter. You need good sound. If you really want good video, you got to have sound. Oh, what about hair and makeup? It's like you're already, when I do my video for my YouTube channel, I have a professional, like high level professional director, camera person, the host. I don't do the hosting. I have, professional hosts. I have somebody who just does short form video. I mean, it's a whole team, and I don't even do that much of it. And it's very high quality what we do, but
Right.
I don't do very much of it. And so it's just like, you need so much more, I guess, to be successful, except, for the influencers just hold it up and talking to the camera too. I mean, you can do that too. So
I think that was part of why this project, I felt like, we've now done it for a year, and part of it was, I think the barrier for me to get started was that I just didn't want to put all that into it. Right. I didn't want to have to buy a, $1,000 camera, and I didn't want to have to like soundproof my room and all of that. And so for like the first few of them were just about, can I pull this off? Was spending a few $100s on a decent microphone. Right. And when I found out that I could, and that I didn't need 10,000 views in order to make it work for me, then it became viable. I guess my question really becomes, is it just that now that you are, like, I am limiting my audience by not doing that? Is that it? Is the barrier for entry now the technology and the know-how and all of the things that go into production? Because the barrier for entry for you was a typewriter and the ability to retype 5 or 6 times, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean, that's a
right.
really
Well,
bad way of answering a question.
Yeah, but I mean, the barrier of entry is very low. Here's my other cat, Chad cat. I mean, people do just talking to their camera. I mean, there's plenty of people on TikTok who just talking to their camera. And the thing is, Adam, and I have had at Toy Fair and at Comics Pro, we were both just at Comics Pro in person, and I had many, many conversations where I'd see an old friend, talk to them, and then I'd say, do your children read? Because some kids don't. And most of my friends were like, yes, of course. What are you saying? But some of them are like, yeah, it's like they just watch TikTok, right? They just watch YouTube videos. And so the pivot to video by big media, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, TikTok, but especially Google and Facebook, have been strangling journalism, and deliberately. And Twitter also, obviously, but that's kind of another case. And I saw on Blue Sky, which is seems to be the one place now where we're free to be ourselves, but in our own little echo chamber. But I posted, I was looking for another article, and I found like from 2017, like something I wrote called "Comics Journalism is Dead and Here's Why," something like that. And it's literally, the same things, and also me predicting what would happen. But it's comics journalism. I mean, I think journalism in general. I mean, I'm hearing the same thing about music sites. Look at Pitchfork. Pitchfork, the most influential gatekeepy, hipster site of music site of all times, most influential. Basically, struggling to stay relevant. Same thing's happening in film journalism. I mean, all three trades are owned by the same company: Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, all owned by Penske Media. How does that even happen, right? And Penske's kind of scooping up a lot of trade journals now. They're kind of the last stop on the train. We're living in contentious times. I say I want to read the Financial Times because to me that is a neutral,
Right.
and it's about money, and that's really what everything's all about. That's what drives all of this. And they have and speaking of money, they have a really harsh paywall, as does Wall Street Journal. And I'm really like, I mean, it's expensive. And I'm like, I don't think I can afford to read the Financial Times, but their op-ed is pages open. But yeah, it's like you really have to you have to be harsh about how you're making your money doing this because there's no money in it. And that was what the headline 2017 was like, there's no money in comics journalism. And money, no money, no problem, something like that,
Where was the money? So you've now been at this, like we said, your first foray was in the 80s. Then, spent most of the 90s as an editor. In the 2000s, you go into journalism, kind of full time. The beat has gone up and down. Like you started off as Publishers Weekly. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, I started off with Rick Veitch at comiccon.com. Then I went to Publishers Weekly. Then I went indie. Then I went back to Lion Forge. I sold the site. I got the site back. There was a pandemic, and here we are. Yeah.
So you started. There had to have been money in it because you weren't doing this for free, and you have essentially made a living. If not,
a meager living, but a living, yes.
If not a fortune, through 20 plus years now of really full-time journalism. What would it look like 24, 25 years ago, pre-2017? Where is that money coming from, and where is that money not coming from now?
That is a great question.
Thank you.
Well, when we launched The Beat originally, 20 years ago in 2004, not 1994 as my 20th anniversary buttons had it, but when we launched it in 20 years ago, it was part of comiccon.com, which was a very different site then. It was owned by Rick Veitch, the great legendary Hall of Fame nominee, Rick Veitch, creator, and Steve Conley, who is still doing webcomics. I mean, Rick is still making comics too. I would always check them out. He's a genius. And they were perceptive enough to realize that there was, an audience for this. And at that time, it was kind of like there was CBR owned by Jonah Weiland. There was comiccon.com, and there was Newsarama, which was owned by I'm totally Matt Brady.
Yes.
And the guy who's still
the science
there,
teacher,
whose name I've blanked out because we feuded so much. The big tall guy, Mike Duran. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And you got it from advertising. Like you sold ads because there was not social media. Like this is a time before social media. It's hard to believe, but there was a time before social media, before you knew exactly what your friends were eating for lunch every freaking day, what everybody was doing and thinking, and at every single moment of every day. There was a time when you did not know what your friends were doing at every single moment of the day and what every other person on earth was doing at that moment every day. So there was a need for more entertainment. There was a need for more information. And those of us in the journalist profession provided that information, and you did not, now, I mean, okay, this is what we call a callback.
There we go.
And it's super professional. Look how we did it. So
we're so good at this.
This story that we were talking about when we began this podcast is that this morning, Dustin Nguyen on his Instagram just said, I'm not working for Marvel anymore. They really rip off artists. And then other cartoonists came out and said so too. So I'm doing this podcast instead of writing this story, but one of my writers is working on a draft. And when I'm done with this, I'll go see where we're at. And so what he's doing probably is looking at other social media posts and collating them and maybe a little background information, which I could supply since, I was a comic book editor. Anyway, but mostly I was even said, why don't you look at this Reddit thread? Because they have a lot of information in it. So, he's online going through social media, finding stuff. Back in the day, you'd have to email or call people.
Or fax them.
To fax them. I've never in a billion years faxed anybody. But you'd call them or email them. You'd call them. Imagine it. You didn't text so much then, right? It was before
texting. You didn't text and say I was going to call. You just called.
Yep, that's right. And
it was like a whole game. You pick up the phone not knowing who is on the phone.
Mm-hmm. So unless you had caller ID and
well, eventually we all got caller ID.
Freeman. Yeah. Adam Freeman. So we were really doing a lot of work. We were doing a lot of work that other people couldn't do by going behind the scenes and doing information. And and then came social media, and it's destroyed the capital of just basic reporting. However, obviously we still need reporting. We still need information that is not posted publicly on social media. And I mean, I would point to a very fascinating story about a Trump cabinet meeting where apparently people were fighting, just like a Saturday Night Live sketch. And so just to bring it back to our world, all the stuff with Diamond. I mean, it's like there's all these filings every day. And I'm sure you and me, everybody in the industry probably goes on that Diamond site and sees what the filings are that day. Mm-hmm. Or gets them in the mail, because that's legally what has to happen. And but guess what? We're not bankruptcy lawyers. So no, I have sometimes asked a friend who at least is a lawyer to explain a few things to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you think you are, I guess this is my elevator pitch for journalism. If you think you are well informed, then you need to talk to a bankruptcy lawyer and have them explain what the papers, the Diamond's bankruptcy filings mean. And,
True.
Or you can pay me $5 a month on my Patreon and I will go talk to the bankruptcy lawyer for you.
Well, that's interesting. So, okay. So let's tease this apart, right? Because you're absolutely right that we do need proper journalism, right? We need something. I can't just go to the Reddit thread and consolidate for myself, which you're right. Would be my first instinct would not be to go to the beat, would be to go search Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
You're not wrong about that.
No. So
we need a value prop for journalism, because we still need journalism to be active. We still need for it to my job is, I would say 75% of my job is teaching people who are not comics people how the comic system works. And these days that means they call me up and say, okay, what is this revelation about the Diamond bankruptcy mean to distribution, to printing, to creators, right? It's giving that kind of perspective for people. I do that pretty much all day long. And a lot of what I do is keep it, I read your headlines, I read Rich's headlines, I read everything that I can, because I want to stay informed. And then I make phone calls and I talk to people who are smarter than me and hopefully get some sort of
and we DM and text all freaking
day long.
Look, I don't think I'm talking out of school, but I'll just say there is absolutely a comics Illuminati, and we text each other all day.
Sure. 100%. Yeah.
And that's important, It's
because
important.
I have to do my work and you have to do your work, and I try and feed you and you feed me.
Yeah. But but I'm sure you have your 10. I got my 10, and
100%, 100%. And for the most part, a lot of it is just like, oh my God, did you see this?
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, because I'm so busy, I'm like, oh, for instance, that Dustin Wynn thing. Didn't see it until right before we went on, because I'm just too busy. So I hadn't seen whatever the violence of the day is, right?
But don't you feel? Well, go ahead, finish your question, because I
guess my question is, what is the value prop of daily? Because all right, to fix this, it has to be Patreon, right? It has to
or
be as a
or
consumer,
advertising or
or it has to
marketing.
be advertising. It's the advertising
Correct.
I want to dig into
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
this is something I think about a lot because of my relationship with the ZCN,
Mm-hmm.
and a big part of my job there, most of my job there, is selling advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say that it is much easier than I thought it was going to be, and I think partially because social media is broken. I can no longer go on and see what you're having for lunch because I'm not seeing what I have for lunch. I'm seeing what the algorithm
You
thinks I
see what
want to
somebody
see.
puked up because it was pile of puke.
Exactly. Like that, because that got views, because some girl in a bikini puked. Like, I'm going to see that before I see what Heidi, I don't know what that reveals about my algorithm. I don't want to know. Anyway, but I will say, like, seems to be this sort of understanding from those of us who our job is to market comics that there's no good place for us to spend social media ad money anymore. Not as easily as it was, say, 5 years ago. So now if we want to get in front of people who love comics, you have to go where their attention is, right? We have to go where the undervalued attention is. And right now the undervalued attention is, ironically, display advertising in comic shops.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do we get to a place where comics journalism, which was so valuable for us as marketers, right? I can pitch you a story, get you to run that story. That might be the most effective thing I did for that particular campaign, right? Now it's even almost nobody is that way.
Look, I'll tell you, I have heard from multiple sources that the Beat is one of the biggest referrals for Kickstarter. When you run, when we run a story, we have a crowdfunding column, and I always make sure we have the crowdfunding column that, it's kind of the break-in job where we get a new writer. We say, here's the crowd. It's, it's kind of a thankless task, but guess what? We know that we're one of the biggest referrals. And also for Zoop. I mean, I've heard this other crowdfunding platforms. We are one of the biggest referrals. So it does work. This exposure is incredibly important. I think it's just that, I think comics marketing is really broken. And and now we're headed into this, Trump session and recession. By the way, I meant recession. And marketing will be the first thing to be cut, as you know. But as I've discovered, I mean, look, I've had so many advertisers on the Beat, and then there's the recession. That's 2008, whatever, and they call and they're like, "We got to cut our budget." I'm like, "Okay, all right, we'll eat peanut butter, or very thin layer of peanut butter on a very small piece of bread, for however long, and then eventually, it's the first thing that comes back." Because how do I promote my projects in this? How do I sell more products? You need to promote the attention. Look, okay, I'm not going to name names. But okay, how do I tell this story?
I can't wait. This sounds like a great one.
It is actually, and it just I haven't told it before because it literally just yesterday the second part fell into place. So a publisher that hits us up for news coverage all the time. I was CC'd on another email where a creator was asking for, why don't you run an ad on the Beat? And a person, a high-level marketing person, said, well, they cover our stuff all the time, but we don't advertise with them. And, it was just a dagger into my heart, Adam. But I was like, and then you know what they did? They eventually did take out an ad. Good. So I had a happy ending for that. Now I got a box of this publisher's books the other day. And it's a very heavy box because it's very high quality books. I opened it up and I had not heard of a single one of these books that was in there. And except for the very famous ones. And I was shocked because I'm like, where did this come from? Books by major creators that I had never heard of. I'm sure there's an email in my 100,000 deep email box. Sure. But it's just like, you are not marketing your projects at all, you know? And
Yeah.
I want a partner. The person who did this might be listening, and you're awesome, actually. So I'll email you. But
I have a guess. I can't wait for after this. I want to guess.
yeah.
Okay.
But that's a problem. That's
It
just
is.
a problem. I'm certainly can't keep up with everything. Look, that's the other thing. You can't keep up with everything. I don't say we need gatekeepers, but we freaking need tastemakers
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
comics because it's so hard to know what's important or who's, back in the day on the Warren Ellis Forum, all of a sudden everyone was like, my God, have you read Scott Pilgrim? It's incredible.
Right.
And that was a total grassroots. You read it, you hear about it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to read it. And then you're like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. Have you read Scott Pilgrim? Anyway, Buzz. It's called Buzz. Zoe Thorogood. Everybody suddenly is like buzzing about Zoe Thorogood. I return to my James Jean story. It really should be the lowest possible gateway that that Zoe Thorogood is talented. And there are other creators who are so good, but because of this mushroom cloud of dust particle information, you can't make a mixtape for comics, or can you? I don't know.
Well, I think curation is important. I think that's absolutely important. And it's vital if you're running a comic shop these days. You can't carry everything, right? You have to curate. You have to be some sort of tone throughout what you do. And I think the same is probably the same for comic sites. It's got to be the same for creators, like content creators who are just on social media. There has to be some sort of curation. It is for me. I pick and choose who my clients are going to be because they need to fit within the realm of what I do well, and that means they're all going to be kind of similar. But I think that there's something there that I don't want to lose before we get too far away from it, because I have had so many conversations where the two of us, where I know we just go like this.
I know we do.
I want to go back for a minute and talk about a man named Fred Pierce. Who was, Fred, worked at the early Valiant, then worked at Wizard, ran Wizard magazine for many years, then worked at Valiant again with me. Anyway, Fred had been through the ringer. He's done all sorts of things, lots of opinions about Fred, but I will tell you, man knows how shit works, and
that's why he lasted as long.
That's right. And I will tell you, he said to us at Valiant over and over again, we pay for advertising. We spend money with these outlets because we want them there for us to promote in, right? Whether or not they're paying, whether or not they're covering us this time around, whether or not they gave us the coverage we want, doesn't make them less important. It means we are putting value there because we need them. And, it goes to what you're saying. We need them to help us break out of that. We need them so that that more than one or two things in our big box of stuff doesn't look like, where did all this come from? We need that because there's no other way to curate. There's no other way to get that attention. So spend your marketing dollars on the venues that are promoting your shit.
And yes. And I'll even say, look, I would love it if you came to the beat and said, hey, we're going to do a, 6-month campaign with you.
Yes.
And, here's a nice fat check. I would love that. But you know what? If you don't like me and you don't like the beat, go to Broken Frontier or go to AIPTC. They're very successful, but you know what? They're doing the work. Or put it on who else?
Zdarsky Comic News.
Zdarsky Comic News. Yes. Yes.
Put money there.
Yeah. Put ads in, but who else is there, Adam?
Well, that's just it. I'm working on a project now. I haven't finalized it yet, but I think it's somewhere some of that attention is going to go.
Oh, you know what? There's a few more. I'm always chided for not mentioning. Sketched, but he's subscription.
Yeah. He does sell ads in his podcast.
ICV too. Milton's always 100%. Good. Milton, when he meets someone, says, "Oh, nice to meet you. Do you have an ad budget?" He puts it right out there.
He really does.
And that's why he has monogrammed, his initials monogrammed on his shirt. Okay.
Absolutely. 100%.
There's also comiccon.com, like
Yep.
a mystery site, but they're still around. They're still putting material out there every day.
Popverse does great shit.
Nobody, everybody loves Popverse, but so Popverse is the perfect example, however, of the diminishing returns. It's run by people who love comics, Chris Arendt, Graham McMillan, Tiffany was there, Tiffany Babb, she left, but started by people who love comics. And if you look at their front page now, there's this much comics and this much. Now, I know it's because of traffic. You get more traffic when you run media stories. Absolutely.
Sure.
But I guarantee you, if, they were getting some ads that generated revenue, they probably run more comics content. And I mean, that's just how it is, like Screen Rant. I mean, CBR is just a content farm now. Comicbook.com used to be a great site that actually had really good content. You couldn't find it because they run literally 500 stories a day, but they had good content. And now that has become a content farm. So it's like, I don't want to quote the poem, but it's like comics publishers. I don't know if you care about it at all, but you are going to wake up one day and I'm going to just I'm done. I'm tired. I'm retired. I'm old enough to retire. So I'm going to just, right.
Don't say that. You're not that much older than me.
I know. But anyway, almost getting there. But anyway, I just, I might not be there. Tom Spurgeon passed away. God bless him. God rest his soul. There's the Comics Journal. They're out there still doing some really great stuff. But, the Comics Journal will never die because Gary Roth has got his son indoctrinated. He has his heir. He created an heir. So who's going to keep doing it? But I'm just saying, it's like you are literally going to wake up and you see it every day. I mean, if I get a press release, sometimes I'll run a little experiment and, that's not Marvel or DC. And I'll Google the book that they mentioned and there will be one story about it. It's not like even in 2017, there was a battalion of sites that would run every press release they got. And you got so much media attention for being in comics. I talked to authors, famous print authors were so excited when they did a comics project because they would get so much press and attention from it. Whereas when they put out a book, it's like, oh yeah, Brandon Sanderson, new book.
Right.
Let me order 1 million copies. That's fine. But they don't get the attention.
The same buzz.
They didn't get the same buzz. And that's why they were very excited by the level of buzz they got from the comics media of that long ago time.
It's really interesting. One of the arguments I have continually with retailers specifically, I have this a lot, where they don't seem to understand what I think is the value prop of comics, right? It is not necessarily a business where you make money. It's just not. The mechanics of hiring and creators and hiring editors and hiring production people and all of that, like it's really difficult to make any profit at all.
Right.
Selling and creating and printing comics. The value is you are creating an entertainment brand for really cheap, right? The amount of money that you're going to spend over and above what you actually bring in is actually really cheap when you compare it to, say, video games or movies or film, or even these days, like content creation. A YouTube channel would be so much more expensive. A YouTube channel that actually built you the same brand. So I say all of that to say, but it may not be that way, because the whole point is you have to be able to create buzz. You have to be able to create energy. And if there is no journalism, if there is nobody hyping, there's no machine, then it's just, I'm in 500 comic book stores. Please make my movie. That's the real sad part, is that it really could end up in that direction.
And look, I mean, it's all important. Sure. I just saw Emerald City Comic Con, and, a lot of great folks were there, and they're posting their photos on their socials of their great dinners and, hanging out and
sure.
That's great. You know what? That's important too. I mean, look, everybody in South Korea, this is one thing I learned doing King Comics Beat. South Korea, the number one job that kids want to grow up and do is be an influencer. I'm sure that's the same here, but I haven't seen a survey about it, right?
Having is 100% of the 10-year-olds in my house. That's exactly what they want to do.
Right. So,
yes.
So, and you know what? In a way, that's super aspirational and cool. If
Sure.
I were 10 years old, I would absolutely want to be an influencer. That's what I always actually wanted to be. Because I had ramble, but I had this insight when I was a kid. I was like looking at Andy Warhol, reading about him in the newspaper or something. And I was like,
right.
I thought to myself, what does Andy Warhol do for a living? I mean, I guess he's Andy Warhol. And then I was like, light bulb, that's what I want to do. I just want to be Heidi MacDonald for a living. And, I kind of missed the fact that he was a groundbreaking artist who, changed media. But, I mean, there was all of that. You know what? It was all of that. He was absolutely doing the brand. Yeah. And I understood that. So, yeah, I would totally, have my brand. I get it. It's having a brand. A personal brand is fantastic and lucrative. And, I was born too soon. That's all.
Or too late. I don't know. Yeah, one of the two.
Well, man, just at the best time, it turns out. So, I mean, yes, having, influencers hype your product is important. And, I mean, look, if Comics Talk is a thing that, promotes, shaking with shaking, what's shaking with shaking, I'm all for it. Maybe that's something we expand into or something, I mean, it has its place, but at the same time, I mean, people want to know about things. And I just think that print or web journalism is still a really good way to find out about things. You know what? Shout out to another one who does it well, Rob Salkowitz. Yep. There's our tiny little circle of comics business journalists.
Yeah.
And, he did what we've been talking about here for ICV2 and Forbes. He did an interview. He got on the phone or the Zoom probably with Christina Rogers, who's the showrunner for ReadPop. And she said some really incredible things that was like, we're really changing cons to a festival format, and we want it to be the World's Fair. And, we look at the lowest 15% of panels and they don't come back. And you know what? That's incredible information that you would not have found out unless Rob went and talked to Christina.
Correct.
So unless all 250,000, 1 million people on Reddit on our comic books are going to personally call Christina Rogers to ask her, or personally call Jim Lee and ask him, you need a little intermediary who cuts through.
And beyond that, actually, you bring up something else too. So C2E2 is coming up, also a ReadPop show. I have a little deal with our friends over there, and I'm going to do some industry-focused content, right? So I'm going to do like 4 different panels. One of them you'll enjoy. The title is called "How Will Print Save Digital?" So I'm,
good one.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm hoping to talk about Tiffany Babbitt. You mentioned her. Talk about her new comics journalism or newspaper thing that she's doing. Obviously, I'll be talking about ZCN. I don't know why I haven't asked you to be on this, but you should. If you're going to be in Chicago, we should be on this panel.
I'm not. My traveling is severely curtailed.
Many are
being stuck at home working.
But anyway, all of this to say, I'm really. What you're highlighting is how important it is to show up, right? What we're talking about is culture. What we're talking about is community. And we're talking about the way you create community is you show up. If you're a fan, you show up at the panel. Even if you would probably rather be standing in line for an exclusive, you show up, right? If you show up for traffic, click the fucking link. Right. Even just opening that link and then, going back to social media. So you teach his Facebook that you will come back. Right.
Turn off your ad blocker. I know it's hard, but come on. We
need them.
It's just so.
Yeah. buy the product, right? Go to the ads, go to the Kickstarter. Like those things are just about showing up as an audience, allows the culture itself to continue on.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. And, it's great that you're doing it in person on a panel, because I do think those are very immediate and fresh. You get fresh takes.
I'm working on trying to get better video recording. It is something that I am failing at.
Well, you should talk. What about the Popverse people? They do all that live streaming.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to them about what's already in place. Something else I'm hoping to pull off is my first live show, my first live in-person interview, rather. So we're going to have a party at one of the local comic shops there, and my hope is that part of it is going to be a live interview with somebody, with an audience. But again, there's a certain level of equipment and know-how that I don't have, that I have to like jump.
Yeah. And look, I'm not sitting here. I mean, I've always been someone who is quite aware that the next thing is coming. And right. I'm not saying that TikTok is totally evil. I'm not saying short form video is totally bad. And or long form video like we're doing now, or learning through these things is terrible, and social media is evil, although they certainly seem to have really fucked up the world. But I'm just saying that
something that's not evil, it has really fucked the whole thing up. I'm not saying it's evil.
I'm not saying it's evil, but look where it's taken us. So
we're worse off than we were before it. That's all I'm saying.
That's all I'm saying. I'm just whatever. I understand you love your TikToks, and but print web journalism has value.
100%.
Well, you and I know that. I'm just pleading with someone reading this, like, it still has value. It has some value. The written word has value, and imparts important information. And I'm just like, well, anyway, I there was so many. I was searching for something about a setting on Word, and that I needed to change. And I Googled it, and of course, all these videos came up. I'm not going to watch a 5-minute video to tell me where on the menu to find change your margins. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to sit there for 20 minutes trying to find that setting. I will not watch the video.
You won't do it.
I will read.
Yeah. You're reminding me of a 78-year-old that I work with, dealing with my father-in-law, who had trouble with his scanner, and he's like, I'm going to read the manual. I'm like, you could just go to YouTube. I'm not going to YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, but honestly, it's like you for me, yes, I am a word learner. It's like, you should see all the instructions I have in the clutter here. But it's like, let me look. Oh, go to menu, click on formats. Yeah. And video. Here's how to do Word. And when you are, I know, I don't need your 5-minute algorithm. No. 1 minute, 30 seconds. No.
Just get to it.
Yeah. Just tell me out.
Well, now that we've complained about the world as it is, let's talk about you. You said, you have looked forward. You all are always looking forward and how to stay relevant. And I think it's really interesting that you did at some point choose, this is where I'm planting my flag, right? You could have stayed an editor. You were obviously a talented editor. You've worked on some of my favorite books, right?
Maybe.
But you...
Anyway, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
But you chose to come here. You chose to be in journalism and stay here and be this, even when it was looking like there is no more, right? Mm-hmm. There was a period. Now it's
be the beat. Go to
the beat. Yeah. Go to the beat. Now it looks rough, but even 5 years ago, it looked like non-existent, right? You were there slugging it out. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about where it is right now and where it's going. So
you mean me particularly?
Yeah, you particularly, or comics journalism as a whole. Let's talk about you as a whole sector. What do you think? And we kind of tinkered with this a little bit earlier. What do you think that comics journalism needs in order to become relevant again? right? To be the place where the ad dollars go, to be the place where the attention goes. What are the changes that it needs to make?
See, that's another really great question. And it's like that song from the David Byrne musical. It's the one about Imelda Marcos. It's like, why don't you love me? It's like, I'm just like sitting here saying like, you need to come on, tell it with the people. You need to, and then I'm like, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So what can we do to become relevant again, or to be more relevant? Well, I do think it goes in cycles, and we are seeing, like as Twitter has become useless, now we have BSky. So that is kind of rising again, but there was a little interregnum where everybody's on Discord. Okay, now I personally find Discord, I used to be on CompuServe and AOL, so I'm used to the message board format. I think that's incredibly useful, but I find Discord actually very, very hard to use. And the fact that it doesn't allow threaded topics, where it's more of this kind of free form, free flowing conversation.
It does, but it takes some effort. Someone needs to put effort into those threaded topics, and I think that's. All right. I'm going to give you my 1 minute defense of Discord.
Absolutely, go.
Because I do think it's as close to that sort of BBS Delphi forums. That I think it's as close to that as we've gotten so far, but it takes some curation. It takes some effort on someone needs to say, this is a thread inside of the same conversation. So I'm going to click one button and it's going to become a thread.
Right.
Someone needs to do that effort. And if you have those servers where you have someone who is invested and someone who is engaged, I think it's as effective as anything that I have seen. In fact, I'm really suggesting that people get behind it, especially as I think it would be great for you. I think, having some sort of beat Discord, I think would be wonderful.
Well, there is a beat Discord, but apparently you can't join it. And I just don't have I haven't had the time. The person who was going to run it moved on to other things. So,
yeah.
But it's interesting you say that, because, Adam, this didn't happen by accident. There is a masked hand coming in, just like an Inspector Clouseau, right? That's pouring poison into the drink, okay? Because what you just said about Discord is, I agree. I think it's an incredible tool, and I do understand. I'm on it for all my games that I play, so
Sure.
I find it very useful. But the fact that it wasn't automatically set up to easily be threaded into conversations and topics is very interesting, right?
I suppose. I think it's designed in the same way that, like, social media itself shifted into past something that you and I are interested in. It did that not for a bad reason. You look at, say TikTok. So TikTok, right? It changed social media. Right. It didn't change social media because it was short form video or it was really focused on the user and it was easy to post. Those things are true, but the way it really changed social media was by using an algorithm to show you something that you would engage with. Instead of showing me everything that Heidi did today, it showed me the things that it knew I would interact with that weren't Heidi. Even if I never had even heard of this person.
Baby animals, yeah.
Animals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Discord, I'm not familiar with the origin of Discord, but I'm pretty sure it's from gaming. And it is sort of meant to be like when you're playing a game and you're in the chat. And so that's why it has that kind of free form flow, right? So I understand that, and this is a preview of an article I do want to write, because I saw on, the other big one is Reddit, which of course Google signed a big deal with Reddit. And now whenever you search for anything, you get a Reddit result. Okay, so user generated information, user generated UGC. But I saw a big name comics creator on Facebook saying, how do you use Reddit? I tried to go in there, but the moderators contacted me and said I can't post unless my karma's higher. I don't understand. How do I promote myself on Reddit? So, which is true. And like here you are, Jim Lee cannot just go in on, James Tiny and JT4. So we got to call him now, JT4. JT4 can't just go in on Reddit and post, "Hey, I have an interview up today," and because they'll be downvoted, or the moderators will come and remove you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the most important, effective,
sure,
platform for information is deliberately closed to promotion.
It's deliberate. No. I think that there's I'm going to push back on that.
Yeah. Sure.
It's not deliberately closed to promotion. It's deliberately closed to non-engaging content.
And
I will say that it is James and Jim's job to create content that engages, and not just say, "I have a new project, you can buy it here."
Yeah, no, fair enough. But I'm just saying, and that's, I mean, I spend a lot of time on Reddit, so
sure.
But my karma, I worked hard to get my karma up. Let me tell you. I
talk a big game. I have not. I should.
I have good karma on not only my own account, but my burner account. That took a lot of work.
Nice. I bet it did.
Oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. See, it happens. You got to get
get
the flow. You got to get the flow. No, but I was just saying about Reddit that the bar of entry is very high, right?
Yeah.
Like even Jim, like you said, Jim Lee, you got to create engaging content, bud. Sorry.
Yeah. You can't just be a brilliant penciler or a brilliant executive. You have to be brilliant in this platform.
You have to be brilliant at Reddit.
Yeah.
So do we want, but anyway, this is all, you raised such an incredible question. What can comics journalism do to become more relevant? Okay.
Right.
And it's like, yes, we do need to create engaging content. So what I was saying though is, okay, now I'm circling.
Can't wait.
And, how things are cyclical. So there was a while between Twitter's downfall and Blue Sky kind of rising where people were going to message boards again, and there was more. And I do think you're correct that Discord obviously has a lot going on. It's just it's a high bar to entry. It's not plug and play. It's not like, hey, just go to the War and Else forum. That's all you need to do.
Well, even there though, you had to behave yourself.
You did, but that was very good, strong, proper moderation, and that's a whole nother conversation. But so I am starting to see some blogging rise again, and we do have Substack. We haven't mentioned Substack.
We haven't.
Newsletters are, the rise of the newsletter. The newsletter became, this has been the big story of the last 5, 6, 7 years is the newsletter, and they're still going strong.
Amazingly
and you have a newsletter.
I do.
And so, you have to have the suite now. You have to have the site and the newsletter and the Discord so you have to have the whole suite of products, and that's fine. So I am beginning to see, I think the newsletter is a good place for strong opinions and good writing. And so it is still relevant. People do quote newsletters and subscribe and pay for newsletters. So I think we're starting to see that long form content. A lot of people don't want to be on Substack because it's another problematic social media platform.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a reason I haven't put up my newsletter on Substack, even though I do try and put stuff that's, valuable for people who do what we do. It's worth paying for. I don't know. There's something about getting involved, but I know plenty of people. Chip, has his weekly newsletter on there. It's great. Absolutely, should subscribe. And they seem,
Andy Stevenson and Molly Ostertag still have their Substacks, and
sure.
So it's. I do think there's some tolerance there,
Yeah.
but it's still problematic. It's still icky squicky. And
by the way,
but
can I say, I just want to give a shout out to the Beats newsletter.
Oh.
I go back to it on a regular basis, not only to
Thank
look
you.
at that, but my favorite feature is the list of conventions. When I need a quick reference for
Mm.
conventions, I don't know why nobody can get this site right. Somebody should get a listing site of conventions right. Nobody's been able to do it. I'm sorry. If you have one, please send it to me because I want somebody to get this right. The one who gets it right is the Beats newsletter.
Yeah, well,
hands
thank
down.
you. Well, listen, that's Samantha Puck, our former managing editor, a wonderful journalist in her own right. She is in grad school now, learning even more about English. So she didn't, Sam, you already knew English, but get that degree. Good for you. And so she puts
Soon
that
she'll
together.
get to prepositions. Man, her whole thing opens for her. Yeah.
But she puts that together, and I help. I send things, so it's a collaboration. But thank you, Sam does a lot of work, and it's great. And thank you. And my newsletter. Okay, breaking news here on is that look, I've heard many people do read the newsletter, and I've been talking about it for a year. But the Beat is going to launch a more robust newsletter that only comes out once or twice a week, that is probably you're going to be able to pay for. You're going to be able to support us monetarily. Isn't that great? It makes you happy, right?
Aren't you so excited?
What
for
a good
something
feeling.
else
What
to
a good
support?
feeling. Yeah, you have something else is important to support. So yeah, but I mean it is needed. And I've just heard, and also I want to do, I mean, you and I have been talking about this every time we have our Rambly lunch. And I do want to do curation in it too. I want to run previews. I want to say, here's 5 comics, look, another shout out to another great Beat contributor is our reviews editor, Zach Quaintance. And he does an incredible job. He does do what to buy on Wednesdays, comics previews, and he does like DC reviews, Marvel reviews, and just indie reviews. So it's like clockwork. Zach his team is amazing, and they get all that stuff out. So and
who else is really good at that? David Harper, his newsletter. He does a great job at that.
How does one person
do it? Know. He's single. He has no kids.
No, he's not. He's married.
He's not single. He's married. He's married to somebody who's involved in the business. And he has no kids. I mean, when I said single, I meant he had no kids. That's the real change.
It is. Children are important. They're the future.
Yeah, but they're exhausting. Can we just say that? Yeah. Who are the best marketers in the business right now?
Well, Sean Van Gorman and Joey Esposito.
Yep, 100%. Man, the Pedestrian, they've done such an amazing job with that book. That publisher, Magma, they are I think the smartest thing they've done is sign that book. Like he's been pitching me that book probably for, I don't know, 3 years now, Sean, because Sean's a pitch machine. When you see him, he can't stop himself. But man, he's killed with that book. You're absolutely right.
They did. And, this is definitely something I'm hoping to do a big, longer form interview with them, because it really deserves study. That first, it's a good book, right? And it has, but it's a superhero book. Superhero books are so hard to market. Like, who's the last non-Marvel or DC superhero that you were like, oh, that's great?
Boy, that's a great question. That's a really good question. I mean, Valiant. There you go.
Yeah, but Valiant, even, yes, they're the third, but Faith, I mean, they had some characters that landed for sure, but it's not easy.
Well, you know what? And I will tell you, having been close to Valiant, and then having seen how poorly I mean, no offense to the people who stayed there, you guys did great work. You just were not supported like we were supported. But after I left, it really went down. And I will tell you, a lot of it goes back to that kind of Fred Pierce ethos of, we are going to invest. And I will tell you, as someone who got some of Sean and Joey's money as an investment for the Pedestrian in ZCN, like, they really learned that lesson and they really doubled down. And then when they had an opportunity to invest their own time and money and skills into and promoting it, they did. Like, it's not, it's A, create great work, B, shout it from the rooftops, and put your own money where your mouth is, right?
Yeah, but I mean, they had a product that was good that they believed in. So it had to be good. It had to be some level of quality there, and also
Yeah.
very relevant to our times.
Yeah.
Great gimmick. But I mean, yeah, everything they did, they had a guy dressed up as the pedestrian, and that costume is not easy to wear. And they just had the cover, it was a great cover. There's some cover images that just stick with you, and that are classic covers, and that pedestrian cover is one of them. And they just blew it up. And guess what, have a great image. And okay, I also love Oni. I love what Oni's doing. Don't
Shout
we
out
all?
to another Valiant alumni, Hunter Goranson.
Well, Hunter, hey, could it be that Valiant was another hotbed, petri dish? Sure. Interesting.
I was just at Comics Pro, and I was talking to a couple of Valiant people there, and we said, how many people in this room came out of that period of Valiant? And I think we counted 10. None of us were working at Valiant, but we were all there in some professional aspect. So 10 people from that office were working at Comics Pro this year.
Well, I think that's not a coincidence at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hunter Goranson, but he definitely came in, and I say it every time with Sierra and then Spencer Simpson. I think they are really when they did their presentation at Comics Pro, I think everybody agreed. Like, every book they did was like, this is for this audience. This is why you want to pick up this book. And this, like, they marketed each book in that presentation really well, and made you see, oh, it's for this person, or that this creator has a following for that reason. And they really gave a context. And, look, you can, Publisher X, who I was talking about, the box of books, there were some great books in there, right? I guarantee that the promotion was like, when Aaron Rodgers, when a quarterback discovers that his quarterback is, on Space Alien, things go nuts. And that was it.
Yeah.
Kids, that is not enough anymore. That's
not it.
Freaking not enough. And anyway, I mean, this is a great, your platform, like, so much of this marketing is zombie marketing, just because when the retailer sees it on their list from Lunar or PRH or Diamond, or whoever takes over from Diamond, they're just like, I'll order two. That was it. That was it. That everything you hoped and dreamed, like, you creator sitting at home, you thought about this book. You wanted to write this book. You
lived and breathed it.
You lived and breathed this book. It was one of your dreams. And then the retailer's going down like, oh, order two. And that was it.
Yep. But you know what? I mean, so much of what we do is about getting them from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3,
Yes.
That's really valuable. But yeah, and that's not even a given anymore, right? There is once again, it goes back to curation. The retailers have to curate. It's impossible for them to take in everything. I remember I have a videotape, a VHS of my first submission for the Eisners back when I worked at a comic book shop. And in it, I said, we carry every graphic novel in print all the time. There is no physical way to make that claim again now.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have to be like Lone Star Comics with their 6 warehouses in, Texas, where real estate is cheap enough you can do that. Like, it's impossible.
Right.
It's impossible now. So you have to get past the curation. Right?
And another good marketer is Silver Sprocket. We all love Silver Sprocket, Avi at Silver Sprocket. And it is really, it is counterintuitive. Like, nobody in the universe goes and says, oh, there's a new HarperCollins book out, I must buy it. However, imprints do have followings. Certain imprints are, I'd say, like, in the book world, it's a little bit hard, but something like Enchanted Lion, right? Like, puts out really beautiful kids books. You might be, but I don't think at the bookstore that really matters. But with comics, they often are racked by publisher, or somehow grouped And I do think comics publishers are like record labels, like the record labels absolutely work. You're right. Oh, there's a new Astro Works out. Oh my, who's on Astro
Yeah.
Works? They just, oh, I got to check this out. Cause you knew
Yeah.
Sub Pop, there's so many great record albums or record labels throughout the years that have, Motown, so comics publishers do have that kind of imprimatur, have that kind of reputation where you're like, oh, I know what this publisher's going to put out, or like
Yeah.
like that, Distillery. I think Distillery is a great example of, they came out of the box with all these big names, but you also got the feeling like, oh, this is the big names doing big ideas.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that was a big selling point for them. So
yeah. If you're entering into publishing, you know the world as well as most publishers do. What is the lowest hanging fruit that most publishers miss? Like, if you're looking for that attention, where's the undervalued attention right now?
I'll tell you.
Obviously the beat, but
absolutely.
number two.
Oh, you mean just where? Yeah. Well, you should totally promote on the beat.
Yeah.
Honestly, we just got a pitch today to do a cover reveal for one of the world's biggest authors. So that's where we're at. Okay. I'm telling
It's
you.
about goddamn time.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've had it before. Not quite this one, but anyway, it's not like that's where we're at though. You know what though? I mean, are you talking about in terms of marketing or in terms of content?
Yeah, I think marketing and content. I feel like I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing, but I just feel like there's comics we're living in the future that you and I dreamt of. Right, 30, 40 years ago, where there's a graphic novel for you.
But there is, but I'll tell you one thing that I do think comics are missing out on, and The Pedestrian is yet another example of it. It's like comics are traditionally really, really, really fantastic at creating very memorable characters who are iconic. And so this is a huge segue for a whole nother column. I'll probably do a whole column about this, but in this world where the comics are the movie pitches, they do not create a pedestrian or a Moomin or a Goku,
right,
a Luffy. I was just at Toy Fair, and when you see the toys based on the manga, they're just incredible and unforgettable and desirable. And no offense to JT4, but Something Is Killing the Children does not have a Monkey Luffy, it does not have a Goku. So it's like I think those are obviously super important stories and popular and need to be told, but I sometimes I'm just like, where do you we don't have Toriyama does not have a place right now in American comics, and it's kind of a problem because he's one of the all-time top 10 greats. So, but anyway, that was my little gift.
I like it.
Throwaway thought idea. Just in terms of marketing, look, I'm just telling you, there's not that much. Do our newsletters, support your newsletters. I mean, I do think newsletters. We get a really great response from our newsletter. It's a captive audience. Our open rate is rock solid. It no matter how much I fuck it up, people just read that newsletter, and which I'm incredibly grateful for. So I just every comic site has newsletters, but I do think I have talked to marketing people at comics publishers, so they are aware that when they spend $1 for Google ads, it goes out into this wide world of CBR, Screen Rant.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's nothing to do with your audience. It's just kind of like spit in the ocean. And a site like AIPT or Comics Beat or ICV2 is a captive audience, and that is actively interested in your product. So, and is actively interested because comics people love to find new comics.
That's true.
I don't think I've ever met a comics, maybe just like the oldest comic series, but who's like, I don't want to find any new comics. But they would be like, who's your favorite character? And they'd be like, oh, there's a new Shazam comic out. Oh, I'll check that out.
Right.
So it's just like, it's comics are valuable as a product, as a commodity, as an art form. In that way, it's like people want more of it, right? So it's fungible.
It is fungible.
It is fungible.
Yes, exactly. It's that juice, right? It's that energy you get the moment that something novel, something new, some new idea, new character, new take, you did not as an audience member see coming. Right? That's the thing that drives us, is that novelty. We want comfort. Yes, you want to see, I don't know why I'm coming with Uncle Scrooge. Yes, you want to see Uncle Scrooge swimming in the lake of money, but you also really just like that moment of being surprised in a good way is the thing.
Yeah. How did you feel when Marie and CB walked into that room? Were you there?
I was.
What'd you think?
I'll tell you the absolute truth. I turned to a partner, somebody I'm working with on a couple different projects, and I said, we're all going to make so much money. Now, to be fair, what was interesting is you look back on that Comics Pro, and I think my biggest takeaway, and I think I even talked about this in my own wrap up, was none of the big announcements were about creator owned, right? None of them were about these big name creators doing passion projects. The things that got the attention were things like, Marvel versus DC. When we've seen, and don't get me wrong, that's wonderful. We need the tentpoles.
It's the biggest thing that could happen. It's the biggest thing. It's the biggest story.
And we need a tentpole in order to get people back to the theater, right? But you need that so that people come in and go, oh yeah, this fucking rocks. I'm going to be here every week again. That's what we need. I feel like in many ways, there's a buddy of mine who I talked to, a partner in another project. We talk, different partner, different project. We talk about how it feels like we're in 1998 at the moment, right? There's going to be, you feel it. You can feel the energy of something is about to take off like a fucking rocket, and you don't know exactly where it's coming from, but you can feel that energy of it's just right now, like the big eyeball kind of moved away to something else, and we've been creating all this really cool shit, and suddenly we're going to get a new audience. We're going to say, look at all the cool shit, There's that, it just feels that right.
Someday, somewhere, there's something. Anyway, look, I said this, like, I really hope Image brings back Image Expo.
Yeah.
And,
100%.
because I Comics Pro, there was 300 people in the room, 200 people in the room, and it was our whole age.
270, 280 is what I heard.
Yeah. It was our whole age, that was super duper exciting. And just to be there and feel the excitement in the room of something new.
Yeah.
I just, you have to, and I gave a little rant about this on the beat, but, and on my podcast, more to come, Publishers Weekly's more to come, available on all podcasting platforms. Which we need to have you as a guest on, by the way. So this is, the classic podcast log rolling. But
where I will reveal something I've never talked about before.
The fact that the two big DC stories had not been leaked on Bleeding Cool was amazing. Impressive.
And Rich didn't even get to say, I mentioned this. He didn't even get that opportunity. You're absolutely, I didn't even think about that. You're right.
Well, I did. And I talked to some pretty high level people about it, because there is one or two, at least, people at DC who are hell bent on leaking all their biggest announcements to Bleeding Cool. And it just, it's look, I mean, I get it. I run some rumors every once in a while myself.
Sure.
Breaking news, things I heard in the bar, once in a while. But reading about it on Bleeding Cool is not as exciting as there being this sudden, like, excitement in the room when Marie Javins and CB Cebulski walk in. And I didn't even get it. I saw them standing together outside, and I'm dense. I did not get that's why they were hanging out together. So it took me a little bit to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, we need more live events, shock and awe of that excitement and there's not that many people who can bring the excitement. That's true. But it's this whole building block, maybe now you say, the pedestrian is teaming up with Batman, right? And it's like Marvel and or Mattel and Hasbro teamed up for Play-Doh Barbie. I mean, there's no rules, so break the rules. And it's like we can't. I think everybody knows this. What can journalism do to be more relevant? What can marketing do to be more relevant? It's just like, a tweet ain't it anymore. An Instagram ain't it anymore. We are dulled to that. We are completely inured to it. And, we do have to up our game. There's so much competition. We just all have to up our game. And, in the case of comics journalism, I know we're running out of time. So
that's okay.
Oh,
we're already over the allotted time.
All right. Well,
but it's up to you now.
Right. Well, but I have to cut this off. So we'll give us the helicopter and we'll
part 2 is going to come up at some point. Yeah.
Yes. Well, David Harper, I do once a year. So, that like I said, there is so much going on in this industry that is not being covered, that is not being talked about. Correct. Like huge
would have been the biggest thing you ever heard back in 94.
Right. Like here, Dark Horse new creators. Dark Horse seeks new creators.
That's and it's a front page.
Mike Richardson as Uncle Sam saying, "I want you." Like, look at this.
Now, to be fair, that came out weekly.
And it's a whole freaking newspaper.
I think it's crazy to me. They put that out weekly.
The Hulk Mind Slave. Look at this. Anyway.
You know what? I need Maggie on this. I realized to get this conversation, I really need to have Maggie on here.
Maggie.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, anyway. Sorry.
Anyway. you think I ramble? Oh my God.
I'm looking forward to that.
But anyway, there was so much, and I only have so much time in the day. I am sitting here talking to Adam. I have to go and do my business things. I am the publisher of the Beat and K Comics Beat, so I have a lot of business things that I have to do every day. I only have so much time to write about it. I am training my staff. They write, we're bringing them along so that they cover it. But even between, there's me, there's Chris Arrett once in a while, there's Milton and Bridget and his team, there's Rob Salkowitz, there's David Harper.
Yep.
And I always leave one person out and I feel bad, but
I'm going to say, I'm only because.
Oh yes, of course.
You got to say Rich.
You have to say Rich.
Okay.
But only because you have to say Rich. And that's a whole nother long podcast.
I know you and I feel differently about Rich.
You do. Let's just give it time. Give it time, Adam. That's all I'll say.
It's fair.
And but Rich works very hard. He just works incredibly unethically. And for instance, okay. I'll just give you one example, just because we talked about this. Just one example. It's not in writing, so it's on the podcast. But big story this week was R.E. Burke, this young English woman who's a cartoonist, and she's detained by ICE because apparently she does not know how to lie to immigration officials, and now she can't get out. And so Rich ran the story, which she good, but he's like, then he put in the link as her father told Bleeding Cool. He posted it on Facebook. He did not tell you anything, Rich. He posted it on Facebook. And it's that kind of self-aggrandizement, commodification of the news where, as told to Bleeding Cool, it wasn't. You just picked it up from somewhere else, and now you're making it like it was an exclusive. It's very dishonest.
I will tell you, I'm going to I'm going to sidestep. I'm going to be politically.
Maybe
I'm
cut that
politically
out.
going to sidestep. No, we'll leave it in. But unless you ask us to take it out, we
I
absolutely.
don't know. Let me see how I feel afterwards.
I will say that as we've been talking, I got a text from somebody at work. I don't know how it happened that I suddenly am working with 6 different Canadians, but I am, like, on a daily basis. And I was told by one of them that they cannot come to convention because they been told by their government, do not go to the U.S.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
Well, I meant yes. Anyway, yes.
What is the? I'm gonna let's bring. We're gonna bring this one into into home.
Well, but just to finish my other thought.
Yeah.
There's only these people. Trust me, we do not have time. Those 6-7 people that you mentioned do not have time to cover everything going on. And Rich covers a lot of it, but he doesn't cover it in
detail.
He doesn't cover in detail because he works so fast. And I look, Rich is what Rich is. And if any one of us, if any, Rob or Bridget or myself were suddenly cloned, the industry would be so improved. Literally just by that one thing.
Just one extra person.
One extra person, yeah.
What is would you say that is? Maybe you just told me the answer. What is the biggest threat facing comics today?
I think it's well, I mean, obviously the economic chaos. I mean, anything could happen right now. Just in terms of, I don't even know where the stock market is. We've been on this for two hours. Anything could have happened while we were on this.
Yeah.
Literally anything could have happened in the 2 hours we've been talking. So we might emerge from here and find out anything. So
true.
I just, and we're seeing it, investors. I thought that this would be, when Trump got elected, of course, I am a New Yorker. I'm pretty liberal. So I was crestfallen. But I talked to some people and I was like, well, at least businesses will be investing and, we'll see a lot of money flowing and, because all the business people were so excited when Trump got elected and, they're like, oh, no regulations. And, so I had this conversation with quite a few people. Guess what? In the words of the alien abduction lady on Saturday Night Live, not quite the same for me.
Yeah.
Not quite what happened.
No.
So I just think, the tariffs, the Canadian tariffs, the Chinese tariffs, which is, by the way, like flip-flopping. Talk about your flip-flop. So we don't know. It's just like we've been cast into a world of economic uncertainty. And that's not me saying it. That's the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times saying it, and investors saying it. Maria Bartiromo said it. Yeah. So, you know what? It's not
Buffett
good.
said it, right?
Yeah, Buffett said it. So it's not good. So this uncertainty. Now, are comics going to survive? 100%.
Sure.
No worries. No, of course. People will be making their little political cartoons on napkins and throwing them into the street. And whenever we emerge from our caves, Terminator 3 style, we'll have comics, someone will set up a comics company and the cycle begins anew. So, another one of my things I say many, many times, probably said it on every podcast I've ever done, but sorry guys, if
it's time to check the box.
Mom, if you're listening, Mom, I'm saying it again. When you say, how do you save comics? What you're really saying is, how do I save my job in comics?
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm not saying that we're not going to see hardship and suffering, possibly from me, there's creators and there's definitely a culling coming and there's definitely a shrinkage coming and, some tightening up and peanut butter and ramen for some people. But I am not concerned that it is of any effect whatsoever on the joyous, vivacious, vivid, and important and, dramatically fulfilling and comedic world that is comics.
Thank you so much for that. The walking thesaurus that is Heidi MacDonald. where I don't want, because I feel so bad. I'm going to go back and I feel like I probably will re-record your intro because I didn't do half of the projects you're working on. Can you tell people where they can find the absolutely crucial work that you are doing? Well, and why they should be subscribing and promoting and sponsoring. And what is it when you have a patronizing
in the positive
sense. In the positive way,
in the positive sense. Okay, well, comicsbeat.com is of course our, my love of my life and labor of my life. And then we launched a sister site called K-Comics-Beat. Maybe not the best for SEO, still investigating. Where that's run by now I'm going to mess up the names of the people who are running it. Anyway, Hayame Kawasaki, and as she is, I said her name wrong, Hayame, and she's the editor, and we have a wonderful staff, and we cover the world of webtoons there, and which is still a very, very, very important growing and evolving part of where we're going with this thing called comics. So Comics Beat and K-Comics Beat. You can find Comics Beat on all social media platforms. I am Comixace, COMIXACE. Our YouTube channel, we're just going to WonderCon in a couple of weeks. We're doing some video. We were doing our San Diego video. We still have some sponsorship packages open for that. If you want to, so basically, if you make like slime, this is what I'm saying. If you make slime, and so send, we'll put some slime, and then, when Sydney Sweeney comes in, we're going to give her the slime.
Oh, I got you.
Playing with the slime, right? Yeah. It's just the simplest thing possible.
That's right. Product placement.
Product placement. Yeah. So 100%. Anyway, if you want to put your products in our placement, contact us for San Diego. But yeah, we have a Patreon. If you want to support us directly, it's Patreon/ComicsBeat. And okay, I also work for Publishers Weekly, which is the news weekly of the publishing industry. And they have we do a podcast every week called More to Come. I do it with Calvin Reed and Kate Fitzsimmons, and that is available on all podcasting networks. And we're looking at doing the YouTube thing, and nobody else wants to do it, but I'm like, you guys, we should probably expand our, it's not that hard, so we should probably do it, but we'll see. And boy, what else? I think that's it. I will be at WonderCon. I have a panel there. If you're at WonderCon, it's going to be me and my pals, just doing exactly what we were doing on this podcast, except I will be the host, so I'll let them talk quite a bit more.
Wonderful. By the way, I have to say, I didn't interrupt you, but I do have a regular joke. Anytime somebody says Calvin's name, I say, didn't he retire? Always get to laugh. Always get to laugh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi. This has been really wonderful. Just as predicted. This message is brought to you by the Prana Bullet. What's the Prana Bullet? It's a weekly newsletter dropped in your inbox every Friday. It's designed to keep you up to speed on that week in the comics industry. And our goal here is to keep it light, keep it informative, and I swear to God, this is in our mission statement, easy to skim. Each week, we're always looking for the new things that we can learn about the comic book industry and share with our clients and with you. So this is the place where you can catch up on everything you might have missed. Plus, the monthly Prana bestseller list. If that sounds like the news you need, please head over to pranadm.com and sign up today. If you do, we'll see you this Friday.